Welcome to On the Firing Line on the information station, AM 1440 KUHL. Information, education, news, and politics of firearms and ammunition is found here. If you have any questions, call us at 1-888-625-1440. That's 1-888-625-1440.
A Minnesota homeowner who shot and killed two unarmed teenagers during a break-in was quickly convicted of premeditated murder Tuesday, with a jury taking about 3 hours to reject his claim of self-defense. Byron Smith, a 65-year-old retiree who once set up security in American embassies for the U.S. State Department, shot Nick Brady, 17 years old, and Haley Kiefer, 18, multiple times after they broke into his home on Thanksgiving Day 2012. Smith's attorney said he was fearful after previous burglaries, but prosecutors argued Smith waited in his basement and intended to kill the teens, with a setup so elaborate that lead prosecutor Pete Orput compared it to a deer stand. Their key evidence was an audio recording that captured the killings in chilling detail, including Smith's taunts as the teens died. The mothers of the teens, who were cousins, cried as the verdicts were read, guilty on 2 counts, each of first-degree and second-degree murder. Smith, who showed no emotion as he heard the verdict, was immediately sentenced to life without parole. Defense attorney Steve Meshbesher said he would appeal. Brady's grandmother, Bonnie Schafel, was among the family members who addressed the court after the verdicts. She said Smith seemed like sour, angry old recluse who felt he was above the law. She added she was sorry his house was burglarized, but said Kiefer and Brady should have had the chance to grow up and learn from their mistakes.
And you are on the firing line with Matt and Kanani. Be a part of today's show by calling 1-888-625-1440, or if you're in the Santa Maria area, please call 928-1440.
That's right. We're back. Another beautiful Saturday on the firing line here. Joe is busy today holding down the fort, so Kanani and myself are taking the reins today. Well, the Second Amendment encounter was a couple interesting things, I kind of thought, when it comes to defending your home there.
Yeah, and the idea of self-defense, and what does that actually mean? Does this guy kind of fall into self-defense, or
Right.
doesn't he?
Well, it depends, obviously from state to state, laws are different, but self-defense is, as a whole, is kind of the same everywhere you go. It didn't seem like they threatened this guy. He didn't seem like he was in a, dire situation here.
Even with a break-in,
Right.
the way it's told, it doesn't seem like that it was...
Well, we weren't there, of course, but
right.
It's hard to say, some places have castle law where, hey, if somebody's breaking into your house, then do whatever you can to get them out of your house. But still, like we've talked about before, if somebody's just taking a VCR, do you want to have that on your shoulders? Because, just let them take the
Right,
thing.
do you just unload, or do you just let them take the VCR you can replace?
Right, exactly. And so I don't, it's hard to, Monday morning quarterback this, but the main thing that really stuck out to me that I didn't like was that they had recordings of his taunts after the shooting.
Yeah.
That just seems, that's where it really starts taking a wrong turn for me. If you're forced to press the trigger on human beings, after you do that, you don't start celebrating or yelling at them or taunting them. Those are people, yeah, they were doing something wrong, but you pretty much just stopped that. There's no reason to, and the fact that they have that recorded is probably not going to help him out.
Yeah, the recording kind of seems a little bit like he was ready and waiting for whoever was going to enter his home.
Yeah, well, but there's another way of thinking of it. If somebody's breaking into your house, I don't think he probably knew they were teenage kids, Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but sometimes that might be hard to decipher in the middle of the night. A lot of times in self-defense, we say kind of barricade yourself in your bedroom or something. In this case, he kind of did that. He went to his basement and waited. I don't know if waited for them to leave is probably what he was hoping for. Unfortunately, he waited for them to come in the door. That's what ended up happening. Yeah. There's a lot of things. He kind of did things right, and it ended up terribly wrong. I think that's kind of what's going on here. He obviously should have It's hard to say, but he probably should have taken an extra second and thought this over a little bit more carefully.
Yeah, it could have gone, well, it did go really wrong, but
Yeah.
also could have gone very right if you, like you said, would have taken an extra second to kind of
Yeah.
think about what's going to happen. And
Right. And being teenagers, I mean, if you shined a flashlight in their eye and started screaming at them, they probably would have ran away. You know, I mean, unless they were hardened 17-year-old criminals or something. But you never know. But that kind of, you know, talking about the teenagers and breaking into homes and that type of stuff is kind of points us in the direction of today. Because we wanted to talk about the morality of children today, the moral compass, so to speak.
yeah, where do kids these days get their moral compass?
Yeah.
Who should be teaching that to them?
Yeah, that's something. That's a good point. Kanani and I were just kind of talking about this briefly, and we'll talk about it more as the show goes on. But where should your kids learn morals from? Should they learn them from an institution, the schools, or should they learn them at home or from friends and family? So we'll talk about that. And you know, if you guys have any opinions on that, or you know, want to give us a call, 1-888-625-1440, or Santa Maria area 805-928-1440. All right. Anything else on the encounter you wanted to say, here, Kanani?
But we have kind of a couple questions that are on the show notes, and it's asking if they had a fear of possible death, and I like to think of, or even a possible consequence, would they have acted the same way? Would those two kids have gone into that house to steal a VCR or just, you know, mess up the place or what have you?
And that's a really good point. You know, I mean, as a kid, I did all kinds of genius things, you know. But I was always aware that there was a consequence, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't come home on time, or, you know, if I did whatever it was, there was a consequence. And I see today it seems like consequences are less and less, you know. I mean, God forbid you can't spank your kid or whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is. But I don't know, maybe a little old-fashioned spanking lets them know that you're serious. You know, I mean, you can only, you know, go into your room. When I was a kid, I used to love getting sent to my room.
It probably
That was
wasn't that big
way-
of a deal, right?
Way better than the alternative, you know?
Well, and I think kids today have so many different gadgets and things to keep themselves occupied that
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
how is, you know, putting a kid in their room where they've got a television and their iPhones and
Which
their
is-
iThings and the computers and whatnot.
yeah.
I mean, what kind of punishment or consequence can you really give to kids these days that is effective to deter them from, you know, acting like morons?
And that's probably a big part of it too, is that they have access to all these things. And obviously, it's not a negative thing to have all the, you know, iPhones
Oh,
and
no.
iPads and stuff. They're very cool and useful tools. But you know, as a kid, if you're growing up, that gives you literally a source to anything that maybe you shouldn't learn yet. You know, maybe.
Yeah, the information is so widely available
Right,
for
exactly.
everybody.
And I do believe, you know, everybody should be able to get the information they want. But at a certain age, maybe there's some things that you should, you know, wait a few years or something. But, you know, maybe these kids were reading something and they thought, hey, that's a great idea, because they didn't know the consequence.
Yeah.
So that, again, comes to the moral thing that we'll talk about. Who needs to teach these kids the morals?
And then how do we distinguish then between kids making bad choices and kids then also making choices that fall in line with that lack of moral compass?
That's going to be a definition on each one. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess one kind of supports the other. If you're making poor decisions and poor things are happening, your compass probably needs to be recalibrated.
It's not pointing north anymore, huh?
No, not true north anyhow. And because that, you know, if that's really what you're going by your moral compass, then you're gonna know. You basically, we've all heard it before. You know what's right and you know what's wrong. You know, so if you're doing something wrong, or if it's not the right thing, then there's
You're
only
gonna
one
know.
option. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You know, I mean, and people claim ignorance to that kind of stuff. Well, I didn't know it was illegal to speed. Well,
The sign should have told you that, right?
Yeah, but you know, ignorance is no excuse. Ignorance to the law is no excuse, and that's just like with firearms. You know, we see people that come in and they say, "Well, I didn't know I couldn't have a 30-round magazine in California." Well,
Yeah.
even though I agree it's a ridiculous law, but you know, if a law enforcement guy comes up, he's not going to cut you a break because you claim to not know the law.
Yeah. There's still that standard that you must abide by, and in that
Yeah.
case, the government is telling us what is or isn't allowable.
Yep. And I think the standard is kind of, the moral compass has a standard. You know, it's kind of like it runs the keel.
Yeah.
We got Jerry on the line, it looks like. How you doing, Jerry?
Hey, how's it going there?
It's going well. How are you today?
Oh, pretty good. Hey, number one, did they have weapons?
What was that?
Did they have weapons and they broke into his house?
It doesn't look like it in the report. Yeah, I think it was just the 17-year-old Nick and the 18-year-old Haley, and they broke into the home. It doesn't say anything about them possessing weapons.
From what I understood, they had broken into his house multiple times, though.
Right, that's what he was saying, was that he was, yeah, definitely there had been multiple break-ins. I'm not 100% if it was all in his house, but his neighborhood for sure had multiple break-ins, yeah.
Yeah, but they had also, what I understood, though, they had broken in, they had stolen his war medals, and they had stolen guns from him, and they had stolen other stuff from him.
Okay. Well,
And I think that's what basically that was the. I know that was an old saying. That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
right, and I understand that, but the problem with that is you have now, that's almost the same as a vengeance killing. If if a lot of little things have amounted up to one big thing, and you say, oh, I've had it, now I'm going to shoot the next person that comes into my house, whether they're trying to hurt me or not. If they're in here, I'm going to shoot them because I've had it. That there starts crossing lines into it's no longer self-defense, and now you're just out. That's murder.
Yeah.
But I do see where you're coming from. Of course, there was other things he could have done to deter break-ins. He could have got a new door, or he could have got a security door, security windows. He could have got a boxer.
Installed an alarm.
Alarm, yeah, all kinds of stuff. But thank you for bringing up that point. Anything else you got going today?
It's hot.
This is true. This is the truth.
It's yeah.
All right.
Do you know how much if they had broken his? Do you know if they had broken his house before? Did they say?
No, it just says that he was frightened from previous burglaries. It doesn't say anything about his residence or the neighborhood particular.
It doesn't say, but I wonder if he had already filed with the police report for these other burglaries.
That's a really good point. I would hope so. If it was happening enough to where he felt like he was endangered enough to where he needed a firearm to protect himself, I would certainly hope that he would have made a report. You know, I mean, why wouldn't you at that point?
Makes sense.
Yeah, because I had heard somewhere on the news that I guess they had broken in and they had gotten war medals off of him and guns, and so I don't know.
And that's really unfortunate that you're going to steal somebody's war medals. That you're just going to end up pawning them the next day. But I understand where you're coming from. Thank you so much for calling and listening.
And thank you.
Absolutely.
You guys do a good job.
I appreciate that. You have a good one. All right, we got Brian. How you doing?
Hey, doing good, man. How about you guys?
We're doing excellent.
I think this fella was actually kind of in the wrong. Now, I will stand my ground. I own guns, and if somebody comes to my house with a gun, guess what?
Oh, yeah. You're getting that 44 out, aren't you?
Yeah, that 44 Magnum. You got it. You talked to me before. But the thing is that guy, if he had pulled his gun and said, all right, that's it, guys, we're done, it'd have been over.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
And typically, that's my stance. I don't want to shoot nobody.
Exactly.
I never have, never will if I don't have to.
Oh, absolutely. The tool is capable of doing that, but especially when you're dealing with kids 17, 18 years old, just having a gun pointed at you is a major deterrent.
Oh, man, I'm running like a...
oh, yeah. I'm out of there, yeah. I'm in the next state.
And that's the way I look at it. Typically, you will never have to shoot a human being,
right,
typically.
Yeah,
typically in your own home.
Oh,
out on the street where these guys got these, I call them assault rifles, but I don't like to say that.
Modern sporting rifles.
and they're shooting at you, that's another story. Also, I may shoot back, but I'm going to get out of there.
Yeah, that's the first thing. You always want to try and leave. If you can't leave, then fight.
Oh, burn Robert.
Yep, exactly. V8 beats 45 every time.
Yeah, exactly. I always said, scared can outrun mad any day.
Yep, and that's a good one. I like that.
And I mean, the guy was in the wrong for lying in wait. Like I said, he wasn't wrong, but he shouldn't have shot them kids. I mean,
right.
It makes us look bad.
No, and I get it, and this is another thing that gives people on the left, anti-gunners, gives them more ammunition to come back and say, well, if there was never guns, this never would have happened. So I totally agree with you. It doesn't help our cause at all. That's for sure.
Precisely. I mean, the guy was in the wrong, in my opinion.
Yep.
But I mean, as a gun owner, you have a right to defend yourself. However,
There's always another option
Right.
before shooting first.
And, as the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. If you're going to have that firearm, you have to be able to accept every sheet of music that could come your way.
well, if you aim a gun at a human being, that means you're going to kill them or you're going to scare them off. And if you have to kill them, that's one thing. But I wouldn't carry that baggage the rest of my life.
Right. We try to avoid that at all costs. That is the final 0.1%.
Exactly.
When you cross that
I would not want
line.
to carry that baggage. I would not want to take a human being's life.
Yep.
Ever.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Brian, for calling in. Haven't heard from you in a couple days. I was starting to wonder.
Yeah, no kidding. No.
Yep.
All right, bud. Thank you.
All right. Well, you take care, and we will probably be hearing from you shortly.
I hope next weekend if I ain't fishing.
That sounds good to us.
All right, buddy.
All
See you
right.
soon.
Take care, Brian. So, those people have good points,
Yeah.
different views. Again, all this stuff's hard to say for sure because we weren't there. Reading news reports, you know how that goes. Could be anything, really. So,
Yeah, and I think this actually is a pretty good example to get the conversation going because
Yeah.
it is pretty open-ended and there are a lot of things that we don't know, but there's a lot of things that we can kind of take back and
Yeah.
judge our own moral compass of what would we do in that situation.
right. I totally agree. So, hang in there for a minute. We'll be right back. We're going to go ahead and take a break. We'll be right back with more On the Firing Line.
We'll be back to more of On the Firing Line with Joe and Jim after this.
This is On the Firing Line with Matt, Jim, and Joe. We will be right back with you on the firing line. If you have any questions, give us a call at 888-625-1440 or in the Santa Maria area, 928-1440. Don't forget, you can always listen in on am1440.com.
Tactical Guns and Gear is the Central Coast leader in tactical rifles, pistols, shotguns, and accessories. Building an AR-15, they have lower receivers, parts kits, trigger groups, and a ton of other AR parts from the most popular companies and stuff.
They are also the home of the Women's 101 Firearms and Women's Advanced Pistol classes and have trained thousands of local
The
ladies.
store is located off the 101 freeway in Santa Maria near the North Broadway exit. Look for the big rifle sign on the freeway as well as the giant 5-ton Tactical military truck, and they're now open on Mondays. America!
On the Firing Line is happy to have Law Offices of Christopher Coleman as a sponsor. The Law Offices of Christopher Coleman is located in Santa Barbara on 2019B State Street, specializing in personal injury and, more importantly, the Second Amendment and On the Firing Line with Matt and Joe. Give them a call at 805-682-3352, serving the Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and San Luis Obispo areas for over 25 years.
Now a great word from Santa Maria Motorcycles, formerly Santa Maria Harley-Davidson, located at 2022 Presker Lane. They are dealers for Honda, Kawasaki, and Harley-Davidson. Grab your family and go see the museum, filled with exciting older bikes that you won't see anywhere else on the Central Coast. As well, they are the #1 motorcycle dealer on the Central Coast with the largest inventory around. Go in and see Martin Buchanan, or you can give him a call at 805-928-3668. You can also go visit them every first Thursday of the month for Bike Night. Starts at 6 p.m. Have a great time with your family at Santa Maria Motorcycles.
We're happy to have a special guest here today at the Plumbing Talk Studios, Jeremy Griffin, owner of Griffin Plumbing in Orcutt. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Jeremy, the reason your plumbing company is called Griffin Plumbing is that your last name is in fact Griffin.
Yeah, that's right.
Unbelievable! Griffin, just like the legendary creature with the body of a lion and the wings of an eagle.
Yeah.
What a brilliant move, Jeremy.
I'm a genius.
To name your plumbing company after this majestic creature. A creature known not only to have divine power, but also to be a protector from all things evil.
Well, it is my last name.
Audience, listen carefully. If your plumbing devices are threatened in any way, I implore you to seek the power and protection of the Griffin.
We're always here to help. Just give us a call.
Call the Griffin.
Find us at callgriffinplumbing.com or call 934-1949.
You are on the firing line with Matt, Jim, and Joe. Be a part of today's show by calling in at 1-888-625-1440, or if you're in the local Santa Maria area, please give us a call at 928-1440.
Welcome back. You are on the firing line with Matt and Kanani, and today we're talking about the morality of children and our moral compass.
Yes, what is wrong with today's youth?
Yes, what is wrong with the kids today?
Yeah. But as we go ahead and talk about some of this stuff, feel free to give us a jingle of 1-888-625-1440, or if you're in the local area, 805-928-1440. We would like to talk to you about it, whatever you want to talk about, as long as it's relevant. All right, so I'm sure a lot of you out there have heard about the I'll call it the foiled school shooting that almost happened yesterday.
Yeah, almost kind of happened in Minnesota.
Well, yeah, it didn't really almost happen, but they got wind of it before it could really grow legs, I think.
Exactly. Kind of everything was already in place,
Right.
and then before it could actually happen...
Because this is pretty crazy. This is some pretty
Yeah.
crazy stuff. So listen to this, and it reminded me instantly of something. You guys might think of it too. We'll talk about it. So, school shootings in America's Problem of the Heart. This is by Charles C.W. Cook. John David Ledoux had it all figured out. He would kill his mother, father, and sister, and then create a diversion to keep first responders busy while he went to Waseca Junior Senior High School to wreak havoc. So already this has got bad stuff going on here. There, the 17-year-old planned to set off pressure cooker bombs full of nails and metal ball bearings in the cafeteria. Students who weren't maimed or killed would be gunned down in the halls, he told the police. After his arrest Tuesday, the high school junior said he intended to kill as many students as he could before he was killed by the SWAT team, according to charging documents filed in Waseca County District Court. And that's something that we see time and time again is these guys are doing suicide by cop, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And if law enforcement doesn't make a fatal shot, and usually the guy puts the gun to his own head and ends it, 50% of the time.
Yeah.
And that right there kind of tells you the cowardice of these types right off the bat. All right, so the guy's name is Ledoux. Ledoux was charged Thursday with 4 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 2 counts of first-degree damage to property, and 6 counts of possession of a bomb by someone under 18. At root, the problem here is one of desire and not of capacity. The issue being less that American teenagers can massacre their classmates and more that they want to in the first place. In this case, as in so many, the law is somewhat irrelevant. It is already illegal for a 17-year-old to purchase or carry firearms, and illegal in Minnesota for anyone under 18 to purchase a handgun or even possess a handgun. It is already illegal to make and to set off bombs. It's already illegal for Minnesotans to carry firearms into schools. It is also already illegal for anyone to shoot their family or their classmates dead. And it's also illegal to start fires, What law, pray, would have prevented this? And this is exactly like what we see all these times where we say it only affects law-abiding citizens.
Yeah.
You know, like everything this guy did was already illegal, and imagine that it didn't stop him from doing it.
No, and yet I think that the politicians and lawmakers are always trying to legislate that good behavior. And like you said, these are things that are only going to affect law-abiding citizens, because these criminals and kids that have it in their mind to do this, that's not going to stop them. They'll find a way to.
Hell-bent, yeah.
Right.
And we've talked about, there's so many ways that you can do this terrible stuff that you're totally right. It's just what they use against the Second Amendment. Basically, is he used a gun, and without the gun, nobody would have got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was actually really the way Charles Cook had phrased that. It's one of desire.
Right. I know that kind of summed it up really well.
So, I mean, additionally, that it's already illegal for somebody to do all of these things, and yet he was still able to get his guns. He was still able to possess a handgun, set off bombs, carry firearms into school, shoot their families, start fires.
Okay. So listen to this, you guys. It was saying it's illegal to set off bombs. So listen to what he did here. Okay. It's frightening to acknowledge, but it seems that if somebody wishes to kill a large number of people, they're going to find the tools with to do it so. Ledoux's commitment here is alarming. Ledoux had planned and practiced for 10 months refining the chemicals in his bombs to try and find a more lethal combination. Now listen to this, you guys. He set off practice bombs on playgrounds at Hardy Elementary School, Faith United Methodist Church, Oak Park, and high school softball field. Some of those bombs were found in March, raising concerns. So this guy went around to about 3 or 4 different schools or churches and set off practice bombs?
There's some serious planning here. I mean, this was not something that he just came up with overnight.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't get angry on Friday at school and go back Monday in anger. And this was 10 months of making practice bombs.
That's long coming. I mean,
totally. Oh yeah. I mean, that's premeditated to the full, to the full degree, and that is scary. The fact that he was actually, I don't know what these practice bombs were really, but the fact that he's setting off anything that looks like that and getting away with it time after time without them catching it yet that's concerning.
And that he's practicing here, and that they actually found some of those bombs back in March, it makes me wonder as to if those places were occupied and a kid found that, or it actually went off where he wasn't around it was a controlled bomb. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous.
No,
but if an innocent kid had come along and found that, what else would have happened?
What could have happened?
Yeah.
And for all we know, maybe that's what he was hoping to test, like what kind of damage it would do. I mean, when somebody's this sick, it's no telling what they'll do.
Yeah.
All right. So the criminal complaint, where am I here?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. The criminal complaint said Ledoux told police that he originally planned the attack for April 20th, the anniversary of the Columbine High School massacre that killed 13 people in Littleton, Colorado in 1999. And as I was reading the beginning of this article, that was the first thing that came into my head, because in Columbine they used the propane tanks for bombs and stuff. And that, and they had the same plan to get killed by the police or take themselves out. So it almost seems like it's not necessarily copycat, but it seems like they got an idea from somewhere.
They got it in their head what they wanted to do from a previous bomb.
And it's so tragic. Well, I guess this guy probably isn't really old enough to remember Columbine well, but to see the damage that did to those families and that community was ripped apart.
Yeah.
So to had he seen that or been conscious of that, maybe he wouldn't have wanted to do this. I don't know, but anyway.
It's like he's on the complete opposite side of the coin. Instead of feeling that's a tragedy, that's a horrible thing that happened, I wouldn't ever want that to happen in my neighborhood. It's like he went on the other side of it to say, oh my gosh, that's really cool. I think I want to do that.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's like the backwards mindset.
Yeah.
Just like when, that reminds me when Santa Maria was labeled into the top 10 violent cities in California, and, there was like the little, we'll just call them what they are, little gangster guys saying like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's cool that we're the most violent. It's like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
How's that cool?
It's that status to say that we are so awesome. And
we are so hardcore.
We're so hardcore at this.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to get on with this. So okay. So he was planning this for April 20th, which was the anniversary of the Columbine shooting. That was thwarted Okay, his attack for the 20th was thwarted because the day was Easter Sunday and there was no school. Ledoux said he had an SKS assault rifle with 400 rounds of ammo, a 9mm handgun with ammo, and a gun safe with more firearms, all in his bedroom at home. Okay, so I'll get back to that. He gave an officer the key to the gun safe and the key to his guitar case where he said they'd find his notebook. He told police that he planned to kill his parents and sister with a .22 caliber rifle because it would make less noise than some other firearms. When he said he planned to go to the surrounding countryside and start a fire, while police and firefighters were busy, he would then go back to the school with bombs, firearms, and more ammunition. He planned to set off pressure cooker bombs in recycling boxes near water fountains in the cafeteria. And, that way, that's targeting. I mean, that's like what Al-Qaeda's doing.
Yeah.
So this is just terrible all around. But looks like we got a caller. Billy, how you doing today?
Hey, just fine. How you guys doing today?
We're doing very well, thank you.
Awesome. Hey, I'm listening here, and I got 2 teenager boys myself. And I tell you what, I know everything they're doing. I know what's under their pillows. I know what's under their beds. And I don't understand why these parents didn't catch up and find out what was going on long before anybody else did.
Yep, and that's awesome that you have that connection with the kids and that you know what they're doing. There's definitely a lack of that going on. This is something that Joe and I and Jim have talked about quite a few times, that you got to show your kids, you got to teach them yourself. You have to be the one there for them. You can't let, as an example, you can't just let the ratings on the movie make the decision for you. You have to be able to explain to your kids and talk to them.
You can't be afraid to put a foot up their butt every once in a while.
No, and exactly, that's what I was talking about earlier when we were talking about consequences, was there's a lot of people now that aren't enforcing real consequences on kids, and that they are losing spec of what is and what isn't absolutely wrong.
Well, and that's part of the problem. We got these teachers out there that are just libtards. They just want to teach everybody, hey, touchy-feely, and there ain't nothing real going on there.
Right, exactly. And, and I understand kind of the way that they would teach because, they're a teacher in a school. They don't want to say anything other than that touchy-feely stuff. But it's not being realistic.
Well, the realistic part is them parents should have known what was going on and put a foot up that kid's butt.
100%.
That wouldn't have happened in my house.
I 100% agree with you. Had the parents been a little bit more involved, and, I don't know, maybe the parents really were involved and this kid was just totally out on his own. But generally, and I totally agree with you, if they could have been there for each other a little bit more, maybe this wouldn't have happened to this kid.
Well, they got camps for that. It's called juvenile hall, so that's a good place for that boy.
Yep, well...
But, you know what, though? That boy shouldn't have been on his own. Them parents should have known exactly what was going on, and that's what parenting is.
Yeah,
you don't put your kids out there in the streets and let them roam around and steal cars and break into people's homes and get shot.
I totally agree, and especially if this kid was out constructing bombs and stuff, I mean... I can only he had to have had the materials for it somehow, and I would like to think that maybe mom or dad would have caught some of that stuff.
If I'm missing my pressure cooker, you know where I'm going.
Exactly. That's the point. But that's a good point that you're bringing home, and that's excellent. Keep the ties with the kids nice and strong. Keep communications open, and that's going to prevent a lot of things from happening.
Yeah, and then we got to get rid of some of these politicians, too. Make more laws the police can't even uphold.
Yep, and it's ridiculous. We got enough as there is. There's already too many, and we don't need any more that are just more ridiculous than the next.
Yep. Well, hey, you guys are doing a great job, and you get Joe back, because we need him back on that air, too.
All right, well, thank you, Billy.
All right, you have a great day.
Absolutely, take care.
Thanks, Kanani. You're doing a great job, too.
All right, thank you very much.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and Billy has a good point. It does start with the parents, I think. That's kind of something we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier.
Right.
Once the parents get involved, as long as they're involved in a positive manner, in a teaching manner, I think that can work wonders for the children.
And it starts from very, very, very young. I mean, as soon as they're up and moving, I mean, you just need to be consistent and always be training your kids to uphold the same values that you do. And
I mean, it pretty much starts when they learn yes or no, because that's the beginning of right and wrong, is learning yes and no. Yeah. So from there, you're only learning different ways of it for the rest of your life. It's just unfortunately some people get so far away from that they lose scope. All right, so I'm gonna finish this one out real quick, and then we'll probably take another break here. So let's see, where did we leave off? Okay, so he had put the pressure cookers next to the water fountains, just where a place where it would cause mass damage. Again, showing that he had this very well pre-planned, and this is very diabolical because he was really looking to inflict the most damage possible. Ledoux told police that if he had brought a gun with him to the storage unit, he would have shot the responding officers. So have we talked about that yet?
No, we haven't. But I find that super interesting that this kid, no matter what, whether it was in the midst of his plan to be shot by officers or to have gone down here at the storage unit, it just sounds like that this kid just didn't want to be alive anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It was very one track.
Yeah, very much so.
One-sided. He didn't care if he got. Yeah, I mean, his ultimate goal was pretty much to be killed by police. Is what it sounded like. But what we didn't talk about was the fact that he got. Somebody called or you go ahead.
There was kind of a little bit more to the story than what's here, but he was actually caught because a neighbor had seen someone suspicious around the storage unit and actually called the police.
Okay.
And that's why they responded to the storage unit and actually caught this kid to find out what was really going on here.
So that's the statement when he says, if I had brought a gun to the storage unit, I would have shot the responding officers.
And clearly he didn't think he was going to get caught at this point.
Right. If he was just lackadaisically going to the storage unit.
I'm going to the storage unit, check my stuff, make sure everything's okay,
bombs,
maybe, do some more chemical work, test some more things out, then, he would have been prepared if he thought that there was actually a consequence coming his way.
Right. That's a good point. All right. Making good points left and right over here, Truth Darts. So what we're going to do, we're going to hit a break real quick, and then we will come back and finish up this awesome day on the firing line.
This is On the Firing
Tactical
Line.
Guns and Gear is the Central Coast leader in tactical rifles, pistols, shotguns, and accessories. Building an AR-15, they have lower receivers, parts kits, trigger groups, and a ton of other AR parts from the most popular companies and stuff.
They are also the home of the Women's 101 Firearms and Women's Advanced Pistol Classes and have trained thousands of local ladies.
The store is located off the 101 freeway in Santa Maria near the North Broadway exit. Look for the big rifle sign on the freeway as well as the giant 5-ton Tactical military truck, and they're now open on Mondays. America!
On the Firing Line is happy to have Law Offices of Christopher Coleman as a sponsor. The Law Offices of Christopher Coleman is located in Santa Barbara on 2019B State Street, specializing in personal injury and, more importantly, the Second Amendment and On the Firing Line with Matt and Joe. Give them a call at 805-682-3352, serving the Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and San Luis Obispo areas for over 25 years.
On the air with the Midnight Mystic is one of our regular callers, truck driver Charlie.
Well, I just seen another one, Midnight Mystic.
Another Griffin, Charlie?
I'm telling you, they're all over the Central Coast now.
How long have you been on the road now, Charlie?
2, 5, 8 weeks, I don't know.
Perhaps you should park the truck and get some sleep, and maybe the Griffins will disappear.
Well, there it is again. I'm going after it.
What does it look like, Charlie?
Holy mackerel. It's got the body of a lion and the head of an eagle.
Is it flying, Charlie?
It's on the side of a white truck.
Is it a Griffin plumbing truck, Charlie?
Could be. I don't know. I'm pulling right up to it.
We seem to have lost contact with Charlie, but I'm sure he'll be okay because Griffins, just like the good folks at Griffin Plumbing, are here to protect and serve. In fact, if your plumbing devices are threatened in any way,
Call the Griffin.
Find us at callgriffinplumbing.com or call 934-1949.
You are on the Firing Line with Matt, Jim, and Joe. Be a part of today's show by calling in at 1-888-625-1440, or if you're in the local Santa Maria area, please give us a call at 928-1440.
And welcome back to On the Firing with Matt Kanani today. We are talking about this young man, who's 17 years old in Minnesota, whose plan was to bomb and kill his family, set a fire, hope that his plan went far enough so that the police and SWAT teams would kill him on sight, and how that affects, or how it has been affected, our moral compass for kids today.
Because this was something that was extremely planned out, extremely diabolical. This kid was really thinking on doing harm, Real quick, if you guys want to give us a call and talk about it, or you have any points to make, 1-888-625-1440. If you're in the local Santa Barbara County, 805-928-1440. So yeah, give me, Kanani, or Jim a call, and we'll fight it out. All right. Okay, so what do we got? We got a little bit more on this story, then we're going to jump into the moral compass for our children, even though we've kind of been hitting it a little bit all day.
Yeah, I've kind of been touching that all along. So.
Yeah. So, anyway, back to Ledoux, this kid. Had Ledoux been successful, he would presumably have been treated to renewed calls for background checks on private sales on assault weapons ban. I'm doing assault weapons in parentheses with my fingers. You can't see.
Little quotes.
Because I don't believe in assault weapons. Okay. On the assault weapons ban. And a limit on the size of magazines. How myopic this would have been. Read the above paragraph again, twice if need be. This is a person who spent almost a year sketching out how he is going to execute his classmates. This is a person who spent 10 months trying to make a more perfect bomb. This is a person who planned to kill his own family with a .22 caliber rifle because he could do it more quietly. I mean, what is this all about? I mean,
how do you even prevent that? What do you even do about it?
Well, that's just the thing. Yeah. If somebody is that twisted over to want to do harm, I mean, I feel like a broken record, but it doesn't matter. It's not the gun, it's not the hammer, it's not the match, it's the person.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use a hammer, gun, match, screwdriver, all those things to do it, but this proves it over and over. And he really had it down, saying he was going to use a .22, and then start the fire. And I mean,
he thought this out so thoroughly that nobody seemed to notice that there was something going on with this kid is strangely unbelievable.
That's a very.
But at the same time, if we're not paying attention to what our youth and what the signals that they're putting off,
how would we know?
How would we even know?
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's just like Billy said, the parent should.
The parent should have known.
And,
yeah. Yeah,
so it's obviously it's just not a good situation.
But we're not the only people who shocked, because the article goes on to say, as usual, the community appears to have been utterly shocked that someone so evil could have escaped its notice.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Ledoux was described by Waseca School's superintendent Tom Lee as a, quote, good kid who was quiet and a B student who made the honor roll. He was never in trouble at school and never had any dealings with their school liaison for troubled kids.
Isn't that what is kind of always gets said? Like,
yeah.
I never would have seen it coming. He wasn't that type of person.
He was such a quiet kid. Nobody had a problem with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's the sign. Hey, that kid's sticking to himself. We better give him some therapy. And that's too bad, though. It really is. And so I believe Bailey Root here was one of the was the girl who was shot and killed, 19-year-old girl who grew up with Ledoux, who was the shooter in Waseca. Can't fathom it. This little boy was shy. He never talked, always followed the leader, she said. I'm absolutely amazed. And again, that's what we were saying.
Yeah.
And, just because he always followed the leader doesn't mean he was not going to deviate from the path. It happens.
Yeah, just because, you follow along and you're quiet doesn't mean that your compass is in the right direction.
Yep. So, anyway, things have changed since we were kids. The thing, I was big into skateboarding. That's what I did. That was my outlet. I would skateboard, ride bikes and stuff. I do think if kids got out a little bit more, and when I say out, I mean like out into the community, whether you're doing whatever sport or whatever it is, but get out, leave your little comfort bubble of your neighborhood a little bit, interact with other kids and other businesses and places. Don't get too set on one thing. It's just unhealthy, really. It is healthy to go and seek these other knowledge, and especially as a kid, as a young adult, especially. I think it would benefit greatly in life to go out and kind of put yourself out there instead of become, sucked up and just into your own little world, because that's what happens here.
And I think we're kind of talking about that. I don't recall if it was on there or not, but when you put your kids into timeout in their room, they've got all of those things to keep themselves busy, and that's not always a good thing. And it kind of sounds like that you're saying that those types of activities, keeping yourself, being on the text machines, doing on Facebook, doing all this stuff that you can do from your own bedroom, is not always as beneficial. While very cool, doesn't help you get that social to interact with other people and get outside. And
the point, I think, of when you send your kids to the room is so they can think about what they've done and think about the consequences of what they've done.
And figure out that they did something wrong.
Yeah, in the first place, exactly. But if you're sitting there and you have the world at your fingertips, you're not going to think for 1 second about what you did. All you're going to think about is, I wonder what Joe Schmo's doing on whatever. I'm gonna.
And how unfair your parents are.
Oh man, I'm always right. Yeah, I mean, I guess that is life, as they say. All right, so. Obviously, things have changed. This guy, Ledoux, this guy says here he had plenty of friends. It was like the outcast friend kind of thing, but he had plenty of friends. I don't think they bullied at all. I don't think he got bullied at all, not that this person saw. Ryan Lano, who taught guitar for Ledoux for 4 years, was left totally shocked. And in parentheses here, quote, John was normal in every aspect. He was courteous. He asked questions and followed instructions very well. He loved music and his guitar and did really well. He was polite and said thank you after every lesson. But that just goes to show, it's a facade. You know? You're fairly capable of being nice and courteous and then going home and building bombs, obviously. That's age-old deception right there.
And this is, it sounds like he did get out and he had hobbies and he did things, and that this guitar teacher of his for 4 years, you see them for maybe an hour and a half once a week, maybe. And this guy was definitely snowed over by him. But again, we go back to the parents. Like, how does your parent not know that there's something wrong when you act a little off?
Right. Because, I remember when I was a kid, obviously I was never building anything like this, but whatever little scheme I had in my mind, when I'm 12 years old, my parents would catch on pretty quick to exactly what I was doing or where I was doing it, and it was almost like magic, like, how do you guys know? And, well, it was because I was 12, I wasn't being very sly.
Yeah, and they've known you your entire life.
Right, exactly. And so that, I think, it all comes back to that. That's the biggest thing of today is the parents, even from the Second Amendment encounter that we read, where the 17 and 18-year-olds were shot, had the parents talked to them, had the family gotten together more and talked about things, maybe they would have understood the repercussions of breaking into somebody's home.
And that particular one also, it was on Thanksgiving. So how are your kids not home on Thanksgiving?
Yeah, that's a good point. And and Thanksgiving, especially a family time like that, it's a family holiday. It's just all around, it's tragic. All right. So what do we got? What do you want to close it out with today, Kanon?
Let's see. Our last little article here that we're kind of touch on a bit. The moral compass for our children. What will our children become?
Dun, dun, dun.
And I think that's really thinking about. We always talk about how we raise our kids, how we kind of start from the very, very beginning and training them right from wrong, and what we view as being ultimate truth. And how do we get that into our kids? And I think being consistent and always, while I'm sure as a parent it's painful to spank your kids or punish your kids in some way, but always being consistent so that they always know what's right and what's wrong.
Right, even if it's just in the back of their head.
Yeah.
If it's that at least that little voice that says, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
Maybe you should just go home instead. Maybe you shouldn't hang out with these people. That little voice goes a long way.
Yeah, it does. And if they are in a position where they have a sketchy choice or something that could, go wrong or jeopardize the things that they have and the things that they value, to have the, what would my mom and dad say right now?
Yeah, the wherewithal to kind of have that insight to what their parents were teaching them.
Right.
I don't know. I just think that's very big. you know, even if you aren't really close with your kids, it's still, you can still teach them what's right and wrong. You know, you can, a little slap on the back of the hand when you do something stupid. At least that way down the line, they'll remember that, oh, I got scalded for that, and I don't, at the very least, maybe they don't want to get slapped on the hand again.
Yeah. And mind you, parents, that probably will hate you for doing some of the things that they are doing. But I think that when you get old enough and when you leave home and you get out and live on your own life and possibly have your own kids, you realize, my parents kind of knew what they were talking about.
Well, yeah. You made it. You know, I made it this far. Yeah, yeah, and that's a good point. Obviously, as I remember when I was a teenager, I was smarter than most people, and
I think all kids think that they're smarter than most people.
Yeah, you know, and my parents didn't know much, and my teachers didn't know much, but boy, was I smart. you know, so.
And now?
Well, now I'm just a genius, and people have to deal with this. But that's neither here nor there.
So.
All right. So sorry, I'm kind of. Go ahead and take it away, Connie.
All right. So this article by Lewis K. Clark. He says, I listen to the news every evening. I call it the rape and murder report. Does the media really think we want to know everyone that was shot in a drive-by, or every motor vehicle accident that maimed or killed someone, or every grocery robbery? Did they think that we want to know every detail of Jean Bonnet or Anna Nicole over and over and over again? I kind of think that's really telling, because you hear a lot about all these different mass shootings and the infamy that the people who are committing these crimes are getting, and it may seem very exciting for young kids.
That's a really good point. I've actually thought of things like that before. Just, you know, now that you see, you know, like names like Adam Lanza and all these guys who have done these terrible things, you know, maybe if you're a kid and your life isn't going the way you want it, things aren't going so hot, that's a way you can kind of, it's a sick, twisted way, but it's a way you can kind of get out there and do, you know, get yourself known.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess in the little way, it's, you know, you see all of those big pop stars and the famous people, they have all of this money and they've got all this opportunity and all the things that you might want when you're young, and you might want those things too. I mean, it's just no different.
Right. No, I totally agree. Yeah, and it's a bummer, that's for sure.
So he goes on to say, where are the stories of young men and women who worked on a new invention, or were accepted to medical school, or performed some fine humanitarian project? Or are Paris and Brittany our model of what we want our next generation to become? I am certain that we all agree that they are not. We want our children, and indeed our grandchildren, to understand wisdom and thereby have a moral compass.
Yeah, and I think this is, well, I'm speculating here because I wasn't around then, but I'm going to say, you know, I mean, in past generations, this is something that I think was more, it just kind of happened. Like, you know, obviously parents thought about it and they did the right thing, but it was the right thing. It was the thing to do. You know, you brought your kids up, this and that. Now, I think that we're losing scope of that, and it's kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
By like letting the school, well, we'll let the school teach them. You know, I'm taking the year off. And I'm gonna let the school teach my kid how to act, basically.
Yeah, or if the kid's misbehaving, just saying, he's just a free spirit, he's just expressing himself however it is that he's going to do it. When in reality, probably sometimes those kids just need to be taken aside, given a 5 fingers, and just be disciplined and being taught that that's not the way that you act in public, or that's not how you're supposed to.
Exactly, and there's plenty of ways to be a free spirit, you know, without being a total idiot. For the lack of a more, never mind.
But you know, I think we talk a lot on the show about our veterans and what they've done, and that those people are actually the real heroes. And I think with what you're saying, the previous generations, I think they did look up to those kinds of heroes and people who were, you know, stalwarts in our community. They did community service, or they helped, you know, the elderly or the children or the disabled. And those are the people that kids, you know, should be looking up to.
Totally, yeah. And, you know, that dang MTV, man, sure did ruin it. But no, I totally agree with that. It's just, I think what kids aspire to be and what they, for what they think is cool, basically, is what it bottles down to be. What they think is cool just isn't the same as it used to be, obviously, but the direction has changed. Like you were just saying, people aren't taking it from that approach anymore.
It's very old-fashioned.
Thank you.
And that's said in a negative way. I mean, I'm saying it sarcastically, but you know, that view that it is a negative thing to be responsible and, you know, upright.
Well, it is. It's just not. It's not quote cool.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're not cool if you're being responsible. I mean, come on. How much fun could you have being responsible? I mean, come on, get it together.
When all of our friends aren't being responsible. So.
All right. Well, thank you guys very, very much for listening this week with Kanani and Matt and Jim, and hope you enjoyed it. And tune in next week at 4:05 for more On the Firing Line.